Hello Mari, my name is Melissa Sweet. I'm from Croakey and I'm here at the Centre for Social Impact at the University of New South Wales today with Mari McInerney. We're doing a Croakey pop-up workshop which has been fantastic, talking to researchers about writing particularly as part of knowledge translation, and so engaging with platforms like Croakey, The Conversation, Mandarin and other publications to ensure their research has impact. And it's been a really terrific day because everyone's been very engaged, had lots to contribute, and as usual I think we've learnt more than them.
And what have you learned?
Well, it's really actually terrific to see researchers that really are wanting to engage proactively, reaching out, because I don't think traditionally that has been the case always in the academy. There's been a big shift happen, I think, so it's really terrific to see people wanting to make sure that their research has impact and valuing those activities. We heard today that knowledge translation is part of the KPIs for the centre, both individually and collectively. So as much as everyone rolled their eyes at the mention of KPIs, it is good that is being valued, because often, it hasn't been part of the incentive or reward system. There might have been an expectation around research having impact, but not necessarily the incentives to enable that to be part of the day job.
And you talked about it being an imperative to have researchers and policy people involved these days in journalism, in the way that we understand public interest journalism. Can you expand on that?
Well, it was interesting that some of the researchers raised the crisis in public interest journalism. Actually, it was the Centre's communications person who talked about her frustration, difficulty in getting really important stories run in the media. And as you and I well know, public interest journalism is in crisis, and we're constantly at Croakey trying to engage wider sectors in this debate and in sustaining and creating new models for public interest journalism. And part of that, we should actually do a big shout out to the Centre, because by engaging us today through Croakey Professional Services to do this workshop, a significant proportion of the funds raised will actually be invested in public interest journalism. So we didn't actually acknowledge or thank you guys for that. So.
But it's that idea of building different groups of people who do.
Oh yeah, the different roles. So journalism can, in a way, disintermediate from the media industry, so it can be done in other settings, and that other people can play some of the roles of journalism. And we've seen today that these researchers are very interested and engaged in that space, which I think is really important.
Okay, thank you very much, Melissa. Now we're going to speak to two of the participants who are here today. We did have many more, but we're at the end of the day here, so we're going to go around and they're going to feel really happy that they were the last people standing and sitting. So we've got Isabel and Megan here. Would you be able to introduce yourselves in whatever way you like, but about the work that you do?
Yes, my name's Isabella Saunders. I'm a research assistant here at the Centre for Social Impact. I work across the board, kind of helping out all the other researchers, but primarily in the spaces of young people, collaboration and gender issues as well.
Megan?
I'm a research fellow here at the Centre, and I've got a background in psychology and drug and alcohol policy, but largely the work that I do is varied, but it will be looking at sort of how we can be making system level changes to be improving social progress. A project that Isabella and I are both working on at the moment is developing Australia's first social progress index. It's an index that's been developed worldwide, but we're in the process of developing one for Australia that looks at things like access to basic medical care, education, inclusiveness, things like that. So that's just like one of the sort of more applied projects that we've been working on, but it has a real potential, I think, within policy to kind of be highlighting where there are things that we can be addressing within certain states and territories, and just looking at where it is that we can improve on as a society to make sure that we're more equitable.
And can you give an example of how that works in ways that we don't see currently?
The index itself? Yeah. So a lot of the ways that we measure social progress, and feel free to jump in, so ways that we've measured social progress have focused on looking at economic outcomes. So how it is that we talk about gross domestic product, and that being an assumption that if we're improving with GDP, that we're improving as a society and we're doing better. But we also know that the ways in which GDP is generated can be based on things that are highly exploitative, so like privatization of prisons, exporting arms, things like that. And so just because we're making a lot of money doesn't mean that we're actually doing social good. And so with this index, it removes the economic element and we're only looking at social and environmental factors. Instead, we look at things like what is the disparity between Indigenous and non-Indigenous children being removed from their parents? How does it vary between people in urban areas and remote areas getting access to basic medical care, things like that.
Fantastic. Now, why are the two of you at a writing workshop, apart from being told you had to be at a writing workshop?
I'm primarily here because I think that it would be very beneficial for me to be able to take the research that I've been doing and translate that into digestible, easy to understand pieces for the public. I think, it's one thing to be able to do research for your own little circle and to disseminate it within academics, but it's so much more important to actually get it out there to the public, and that's something that I don't have a huge amount of experience in, so that's what this workshop's been perfect for, and it's actually really encouraged me to put my foot in it a bit more. I haven't really exposed myself too much to that world, so yeah, that's something I'll really be doing a lot more.
And have you got a takeaway tip that you could share with other people that's something to think about?
I would say the inverted pyramid of how to write and putting that most important headliner, catchy, newsworthy piece at the top of it instead of just waffling on at the beginning with all the background and context forever, which is probably what I was super guilty of. You can do that later. No one finishes the article anyway, so...
Did you want to explain the inverted pyramid model?
Oh, yeah. Well, so at the very top, the top of the pyramid, which is originally the bottom, the most newsworthy piece, then underneath it, all the important details, and then at the bottom is background, any other, context that you need. Whereas I think originally the typical model of writing was flipped the other way, where you start off with the background, then you kind of end with the big final newsworthy thing. But yeah, it's been turned on its head,
Great.
so to speak.
Thanks, Isabella. Yeah. And Megan, can you talk about why you are here today?
Yeah. I want to do more writing, but it's been hard to, I guess, get into the mindset of doing writing that isn't for reports and things like that. But I think that it's a responsibility as people who do research to make sure that our work is accessible and that we are working to talk about that research with the wider public, and making sure that it's something that can be accessed really easily, like Isabella was talking about. And I think it's also a way of reminding ourselves of why we do what we do as well. It's sort of a way of affecting social change by helping to inform the public.
Fantastic. And your takeaways?
My takeaway is probably to just start it, just do it.
Yeah.
Stop making excuses, but just don't be afraid to have a go. I think the writing a pitch exercise was really valuable and very vulnerable and nerve-wracking to do, but you were both lovely. But yeah, just start, just try and sort of build that experience rather than sort of thinking if I can't do it now, I should never do it.
Thank you very much. And for both of you doing your first Periscope, very brave.